Hello, this is w.i.t.c.h.aholic. This is gonna be a short video, but I need to make a video because this topic is so weird. Like I can't believe so many people think that way. That topic is the anti-Zionist creepy obsession with Ashkenazi Jews. I say this because when anti-Zionists, talk about Jews, being indigenous, they always mention Ashkenazi, not Jews, which isn't much better, but it's just Ashkenazi, because they have a creepy obsession with Ashkenazi, and somehow we're not Jews because our ancestors ended up in Europe, and that makes us not Jewish. I mean, first of all these people arguing this are not Jewish, so why do they think they decide who's Jewish or not? You don't see these people arguing over any other ethnic minority, right? Because obviously, when you look up all other ethnic minorities and ethno religions, the people, they decide how, you belong to that group and join that group. And everyone understands that. Somehow, when it comes to Jews, so many people cannot understand that we decide who's Jewish and how you join our nation and tribe. No, suddenly it is such a hard concept, and why we always have to explain this ad nauseum. That alone is just something, But when it comes to the topic of Jews, being Jews and so being indigenous to Israel, which is where we come from, which is why our whole religion and culture is about Israel. That's where our history is. That's why all that archaeology you dig up shows that. But somehow this idea that Jews aren't indigenous is only on Ashkenazi, even though, as we say and have always said, this label, like Sephardi and Mizrahi, just indicate where our ancestors ended up in the diaspora. We're all still Jews, part of the nation of Israel. In Hebrew, Am Yisrael. We all have the same religion and culture. So this obsession with trying to say that because we use the label Ashkenazi, we're not Jewish, not indigenous to Israel. I mean, I had a long internet conversation with someone who insisted that Jews, because our ancestors ended up in Europe, Jews lost their culture and everything, and the Palestinians are more culturally Jewish than us actual Jews. And it's like, what? I mean, these people, how do their thought processes work? Especially because you don't see people doing this to any other minorities, because what do you mean? But somehow when it comes to Jews, like, they think reality doesn't apply and non-Jews decide who's Jewish or not. And again, only like specifically Ashkenazi Jews, because they have this creepy obsession and an astonishing ignorance of how Judaism works, which is another thing. Like, surely if you're going to argue about, okay, how who's indigenous because of who has the culture, we should know how Jewish culture works. We're all culturally Jewish. Again, labels like Ashkenazi just indicate where our ancestors ended up in the diaspora. That's it. But these people don't even seem to know that, even though they're so obsessed with Ashkenazi Jews, and they don't seem to know anything about Judaism either, and what Jewish culture is. But they're so intent on trying to, quotation marks, prove that Ashkenazi Jews aren't Jews because our ancestors landed in Europe, and somehow that makes us not Jewish. Again, you don't see these people saying these things about any other minorities because the European continent does not have the power to magically change your culture. Like, obviously, I mean, when you look at all the immigrants, right? For example, the Islamic immigrants, the people argue incessantly online that because their ancestors moved to Europe, the people aren't Muslims and Arabs or whatever culture. No. Somehow, though, when it comes to Jews, they think that because our ancestors moved, well, not really moved, they ended up in Europe because that's where they ended up after the Romans conquered and expelled us. But all of a sudden, when it comes to Jews, they're arguing how, oh, Europe, their ancestors ended up in Europe, they're not indigenous because they lost the culture or whatever. We're Again, if you're not Jewish, you don't decide who's Jewish or not, which they understand when it comes to other minorities. So why is this hard to understand when you're Jewish? And again, we haven't lost our culture. That's why we still have Judaism and Jews, because we still have our culture and we haven't lost it. This obsession with pretending Jews, specifically Ashkenazi Jews, magically lost their culture, even though they didn't, because their ancestors landed in Europe and therefore they're not indigenous, is just so creepy and weird. And again, the only people arguing this are not Jewish. You look up online, all of us Jews, we have repeatedly, and we said and we continue to say that we are Jewish. If you're Ashkenazi, you're Jewish, just like Sephardim and Mizrahim and all other Jews are Jewish, because we have the same culture and religion. Also, Judaism is an ethno-religion. It's you're Jewish if your ancestors, really, if your mother was ethnically Jewish and hers, and so on and so on. But again, because these people are so ignorant, they don't even know that, and that they somehow think they could talk about Jewish culture and how it works. I really want to know, like, if you think this way, why do you think you decide how being Jewish works and not actual Jews? And if the only people saying that Ashkenazi Jews aren't Jewish or whatever are not Jewish, why do you think that's true? Don't you think we know who's Jewish or not better than you? Just like all ethnic minorities decide who belongs to that minority and not other people? Like, I really want to know. And again, why the focus on Ashkenazi Jews? Again, the label is just a label indicating where our ancestors ended up in the in the diaspora. What is this creepy obsession with pretending it means something else? That's it. If you want to hear more videos on this topic, you can request, in a comment. I'll probably make one or two more videos about this and, anti-Zionism in particular, because I've only covered like one part of how it's anti-Semitic, and then there's a few others. I also make, well, not, well, I do make videos on other topics, but, real life, I don't know how much more videos I'll make really and when, but you could look through my other videos, and if you're interested in other topics, again, you could request in a comment that I make more on those topics, and I'll see you next time.